A local lawmaker bringing the voice of the Valley and farmers to Washington. Our Emily Irwin had a chance to sit down with Congressman Jim Costa and talk about what he's doing to bring more resources to the ag business right here in the Valley.
Well, weeks since returning to Washington, Congressman Jim Costa has been advocating for several key issues here in the Valley: water, farmers, and protecting federal programs and initiatives that benefit people here in California and around the nation. So joining me now to discuss his work in Washington is Congressman Jim Costa. So thank you so much for joining me on Sunday Morning Matters.
Well, thank you, because Sunday morning always matters, and it's great to be on the show.
They do. It's like setting the tone for the rest of the week.
Absolutely.
Kind of like making your bed in the morning. Okay, so I want to start with asking you about your work on the House Ag Committee and making sure that our Valley interests are represented and we're getting what we're asking for. How do you do that on the committees that you serve on in Congress?
Well, as one of the highest-ranking members on the House Ag Committee, I think that the agricultural productivity of this valley is among the highest in the entire country. 300 commodities. Agriculture is we're the #1 ag state in the nation, so as a representative on the committee, my job is to advocate on behalf of California agriculture. And we do that in a number of different ways, focusing on reauthorization of the Farm Bill, which unfortunately we're a year behind. Hopefully we'll get it done this year. Important commodities that depend upon market access to promote our agriculture sales. 44% of California's agriculture is exported. Focusing on efforts to deal with quality control. We've had a real serious problem here in the last year with the high-path avian flu that started with poultry and now has spread to the dairy industry. California's dairy industry, we produce 20% of all the milk products in America. But the list goes on, and so there's a lot of legislation that we deal with, and we hope that we'll get a farm bill this year.
What do people in D.C., people that you work with, your colleagues, what do they think about California agriculture? Because we grow stuff all around the country, and people consider themselves farmers or from farming states or from farming regions. But the Central Valley is sometimes overlooked as a part of that community. What do they think about California?
Well, many of them are surprised. I mean, they know that California is big in aerospace and high tech with Silicon Valley, and of course tourism industry. But they don't many realize that we're the #1 agricultural state in the nation, and we have been for decades.
Right.
And it's not even close. Last year, $59.5 billion at the farm gate. I think Texas is #2 at some $30 billion plus. And we continue to just be at the cutting edge of technologies and research and value added. 75–80% of the world's almonds and pistachios come from California. My congressional district is the largest citrus producing congressional district in the nation. 80% of the citrus production is here in California. 90% of the canned tomatoes comes from California. So the diversity of over 300 commodities, we have to continue to let people know in Washington and other parts of the country that we are the #1 agricultural state in the nation, putting food on America's dinner table every night. And I say on the committee, food is a national security issue. We don't look at it that way often, the majority of Americans, because you go to a grocery store, you go to your favorite restaurant, and there seems to not be shortages, although right now with eggs there's a problem because of the high-path avian flu. But notwithstanding, people take their food for granted, and I suspect with climate change and other factors, we're going to find that in the middle of this 21st century, whether or not nation states can live together amicably will in large part due to food production and water availability, because where water flows, food grows. That's one of the other things I spend a whole lot of time on is water, because 99% of our valley's agriculture is dependent upon irrigation, whether it's surface water or groundwater, and that's one of the reasons we're so productive with good soils and good climate.
So that leads me right into my next question. You also mentioned, we think of California, we think of Silicon Valley, we think of some of the coolest and most innovative technology, but if you come to the Central Valley and you see how they pick those tomatoes that they're going to can without crushing them, without damaging them, it is innovative, and our farmers have to do more with less resources every single year. So when we talk about water, because we can't farm without it, what specifically does the committee look at? What legislatures or laws or bills are you guys writing to address that? And then specifically addressing our groundwater recharge, because that's really important when it doesn't rain.
Correct. Farmers in the Valley care about a lot of things, and it's a very highly regulated industry. But number one is a reliable water supply. Number two is a reliable workforce. And number three is a fair, level playing field for trades, which is why the tariffs right now are of great concern. But the water reliability, where we're focusing on, is to get in balance with climate change factors, our surface supply of water behind our dams, and to get our groundwater in a place where it can be recharged effectively, because the majority of farmers here have water from two sources. They have their surface water from the water district that they farm in, although some farmers don't have a water district that they farm in, and that's more difficult for them. And then groundwater, the wells, are the second source of water in which we rely on. And what we're trying to do, and we've provided literally over $1 billion for groundwater recharge, and all our water districts now are actively engaged in recharging their underground supply. Individual farmers are doing the same. And so 2 years ago, when we had that deluge of those atmospheric rivers, we were able to use that water, and we think that we've recharged over 1.6 million acre-feet of water in the last 18 months. That's raising the water level from our underground supply, which is critical. You know, I joke that when I was at Fresno State a few years ago, I got my first checking account, and my dad said, "Kid, you can only write those checks as long as you're making deposits, right?" Well, that's our groundwater.
Right.
If we're not having our groundwater in balance, we can't continue to withdraw from that underground supply and expect that to be a long-term supply of water.
And you can catch the rest of Emily's interview with Congressman Costa by visiting our website. That is yourcentralvalley.com.